the tough new UN sanctions could slash North Korea's $3 billion annual export revenue by about 1/3. It would be a huge blow to an economy that barely has enough food to feed its people. And that's the concern, isn't it? Yes, hammer the obese inbred dictator Kim Jong-un, but who will suffer more, Kim or the people of North Korea? Joining me now from our bureau in Washington, D.C., national security expert and president of IRIS Independent Research, Rebecca Grant, Ph.D. Rebecca, that is the problem, right? You can sanction Kim Jong-un, and it will hurt him. It'll hurt him in the pocketbook. It may even harm his effort to advance his ICBM and nuclear network. But in the end, it's the people of North Korea who may get the short end of the stick here. I mean, this guy can barely feed his people, doesn't seem to really care about feeding his people and making sure his people are taken care of. And so that's the problem.
Well, maybe, maybe not. So first of all, Nikki Haley, wonderful. This is a touchdown for her. It's really a big deal. And actually, I'm glad to hear that the tone of the tape that you played, the Korean language, the bully is really squealing, because these are sanctions that really can bite. What's even more important is that Nikki Haley managed to line up China, line up Russia, and get 100% in that vote at the UN Security Council. So if she needs to go back again and do more sanctions or do a resolution for military options if it comes to that, what she's shown is she has the power to get that vote at the UN. This is a huge step forward towards making some progress on North Korea.
And you hit on it there, is China is key in this equation. Of course, China and North Korea, they trade. In fact, I think 90% of the trade out of North Korea is with China. So China is supporting the sanction package, and one would assume that it would harm some of that trade that occurs between those two countries. But you have to look at the big picture here, right? You have to look at Donald Trump taking to Twitter, of all things. It's Twitter diplomacy, if you think about it, because Donald Trump has been very vocal and very open about the effort to work with China about North Korea. But then he's also been very adamant about the fact that China hasn't seemed to really help. And so this Twitter diplomacy, I think, is an element in what is transpiring here.
Yeah, they used to call it multi-track diplomacy. Now the Twitter is a piece of it. So you can be sure he's still having private discussions with China. We've had some indications of that. So he's using Twitter. He's using the aircraft carriers. He's using U.S. ground and air forces in South Korea. So it's the same strategy. Hold firm on the military options and let's get some movement diplomatically. That's what's so exciting really about this UN resolution, is it's starting to work. This has taken about 3 or 4 months for this to come together, but we do see some progress. And China is really being specific now, saying they want to see those ballistic missile shots stopped. They're participating in the sanctions. And back to your earlier question, the sanctions are really aimed at Kim and at his regime primarily.
There is a trickle-down effect that we should note from that, and he may, in fact, punish his own people because of this. Who knows? I mean, he's clearly not a rational human being. In fact, going to that, he's demanding justice against the president. He says, rightfully so, that the West, including the United States, is trying to isolate North Korea. That's exactly what's trying to transpire here. He's also talking about some sort of severe lesson, some sort of severe blow to the United States. So here's the question. We have unconfirmed reports that the North Korean ICBMs can reach U.S. territory, and that would be either Hawaii or Alaska or possibly even the mainland. How verifiable is this? The White House won't verify it. What are you hearing?
Well, it's based on the tests that they've done. So Strategic Command and Northern Command, which runs our missile defenses, have been planning for a couple years on the basis that eventually those ICBMs might have the range, if everything works right, to hit U.S. territory. So that's why we have our missile defenses, which culminate in the interceptors that are based in Alaska and in California. But there's no question he's going down this road, and the 2 tests that he did in July of the intercontinental missile really show that he may have this potential. Now, here's the important thing. Admiral Harry Harris out in Pacific Command, he says about those missiles, if it flies, it dies. Right. Our interceptors are designed to hit them out over the Pacific Ocean.
Right. Okay, so here's the final question regarding North Korea. Is a military option even an option? By military, I mean a first strike option, because we almost have a situation here of mutual self-destruction, because you know that X amount of Kim Jong-un's artillery, if you will, is aimed at Seoul, and Seoul being the most densely populated city on the planet, some 25 million people. A first strike option, do you see that as an option?
I think all the military options are on the table, and it is possible that we can do things to Kim Jong-un's target set that he has not even dreamed of. How about a mother of all bombs on some of those artillery caves you just talked about? It is possible to do a limited strike option. The Pentagon hasn't taken any of this off the table. We remember that Congress was briefed back in April. I'm sure they heard about what some of these options are. Yeah, I think all the military options are on the table, but we will be very discriminate. We will set this up the way that we and our allies want to set it up if it comes to military force.
Okay, I got to shift to another national security item, and that is the unmasking of Americans, which dates back, of course, to the Obama administration, which dates back to James Clapper, who apparently eased the rules in terms of sharing intelligence information so that these unmasked individuals were spread around government. Barack Obama apparently did the same thing, or at least approved of this measure. Now we've got Ben Rhodes, who was the former advisor for Barack Obama, as a person of interest related to this unmasking. And then that brings us to H.R. McMaster, the national security advisor for this president, allowing Susan Rice and her classified level to be rolled over once again. In other words, Susan Rice still has access to classified information. Now, I don't quite understand, number one, why McMaster is part of the Trump administration, being that he is somewhat of a holdover of the Obama administration. That's number one. And number two, do you see any reason whatsoever for Susan Rice to still have this classified level of intelligence?
Well, some of this is just procedure. So if the reporting is 100% accurate, then what McMaster has done is he said, yeah, she's keeping her top secret clearance, she's keeping some need to know. There could be a reason for this. If you bought a house and you wanted to ask the previous owners about the leak in the basement, you want to be able to get in touch with them. So he may have some valid reasons for needing to speak with her on top secret information. So some of it's kind of procedure. But Graham, you're right. Anytime we hear the names Susan Rice, Ben Rhodes, Samantha Power, we know that they were such early members of Obama's inner circle, and we always think that maybe there's something political going on. You kind of really wonder about it. The broader unmasking you mentioned that Clapper did, the purpose of that was to try to make it easier to catch up with terrorists and to aid our actionable intelligence. But, you know, it's all kind of a stew. And I kind of have to wonder, what were these White House officials doing, unmasking this and unmasking that, when they should have been worrying about North Korea's nuclear tests and ICBM tests? So what were they doing?
That was the excuse anyway, to go after the terrorists, right? But we know there's evidence that the unmasking was used against people who live in this country, who shouldn't be subject to that. So a couple of things I have a problem with this unmasking. Number one, it's done secretively. Number two, it could harm our relationships, could it not, with people out in the field. They're worried that if people in the United States are unmasked, that they might be unmasked as well. Therefore, their entire lives could be at stake.
Yeah, the unmasking makes us all very uncomfortable. First, the fact that this data is being collected, but we know some of it's necessary for national security. But the extension of the unmasking, it's just kind of hard. Now, we know that the NSA is very reluctant to unmask. CIA is a little bit broader-minded about how they do it. But what's uncomfortable is we just have to hope it's not political, and we have to hope it's not going to affect operations in the field. And it's hard to be comfortable with that, isn't it?
Well, I'm going to do more than hope. I'm going to call for an end to it, because this is a clear and present violation to our liberty, and it's a clear violation of the Fourth Amendment. I think we need to get rid of the FISA courts. I think that's it. I think we need to go to another system where the people have a say in all this equation. Rebecca, thank you.